Hello to the human family out there. Today we've got someone I've also pilfered from the fluid voice. Again, it seems to be my waiting room. The wonderful leftist creator Zanzi, who talks in very long streams and has a lot to say and is very interesting all the time. um, so I suppose that puts you on the spot. I I try to start these with a story, but I've told some of the stories already. So let's just wander into you. So the basic the who are you, what do you do part.
No worries. Thanks for the floor, my friend. My name is Zanzi. I'm an Irish Republican socialist. I love introducing myself that way to particularly Americans because the word Republican has a very ingrained cultural meaning where everywhere else in the world it has a different perspective. Um, I'm what I would describe myself as I'm an old school Marxist in that my analysis comes from kind of like the early Marx, humanist Marx, because I have a penchant for philosophy and I love just kind of like deconstructing society, which is like you've alluded to. I will just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And I have a Twitch stream at the moment, which is kind of where you can find the most of what I do, where I'm blending what I consider two very interesting things. I'm speedrunning games very, very quickly while ranting incessantly about left-wing politics. It's an interesting mix, but it's working for me right now. I also have a YouTube where I do a podcast called Left Thinking,
Yeah.
where what I do is I get one-on-one long-form conversations, and it's centered around a premise of two questions. One, it's what brought you to the left? And then broadly, what does left-wing politics mean to you? And the whole point of that conversation is to avoid tendency so we can discuss commonalities. Because like a Marxist-Leninist, an anarchist, a socialist, a Maoist, we all root our politics in what is the contemporary society we exist within, not the ideal abstract concept of the text written in a book somewhere. And I can sum it up entirely in a tweet I have, which is, it's your lived conditions that give you your politics, not your books. Your books contextualize your struggle, but they will never give you a struggle.
Yeah, I saw that. That's your bio or pinned comment.
My pin tweet at the moment, yeah.
Yeah. The It's one of the well, I'll go with the why do you do, but something that we discussed like for 2 seconds on Twitter a month ago or so. um, One of the things that annoys me as a leftist person is always the perfect being the enemy of the good, um, and I'd rather things get better than just saying it's hopeless without. This is the example I'll keep using until I'm old and grayer, older and grayer. Which is I was modding a stream, and someone just said they were really depressed that day in the stream, and so I immediately went to that person, what's going on, what's that kind of thing, and one of the other mods just wrote, "No one can be happy under capitalism," which is missing the forest. It's missing the trees for the damn forest, really.
And it's a totalizing phrase that kind of ignores the individual, not harm, but kind of hurt in that moment, where it sounds like a phrase of kind of solidarity when what it is, it's kind of like dismissal so that we can just kind of like keep going. It's almost like the train doesn't stop, just get used to it moving.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, as a trans person, I've also been accused of being trans for big pharma, which okay,
Being trans for what?
for big pharma.
Oh, big. I don't even know how to begin unpacking that.
I came from your island.
Are you on the board of directors? Do you sit around and says, okay, so how can we keep Big E out of the hands of?
It's amazing, isn't it? So why do you do what you do, basically?
A big part of it is that ironically it's another tweet that I put up a few weeks ago that I think it was tongue in cheek, but the more I thought about it, the more I really reflected on it, which is some people fix the world because it's the only way they found that actually helps them fix themselves. And in some way it's because like I once coronavirus settles down, I need to go to my GP because I'm absolutely convinced I either have a strain of ADD or a strain of autism. I say strain, it's probably a very bad way of putting it. A tendency within me, it's a certain outlook. It's that for a long time, I felt horribly isolated in just the way I would look at the world. And it kind of pulled me away from a lot of things. And the moment I started thinking about, the moment I started rethinking about politics, it was a very analytical way of looking at the world that made me feel a part of it. And then in a weird way, it was kind of like that I could then influence it and I could be not just at the mercy of the world, but the world could be at the mercy of me. And then I discovered the writings of Marx, and that was his entire concept of materialism, which is human action is one of the most dialectic processes of just change within society. And that's when people do things, they become a force in themselves. And being able to kind of like read that abstractly and to kind of identify with that, no, in a weird way, like that I am human, like I can exist, I'm normal, I'm fine. And it's just like in a weird way, it's the kind of like the abstract nature of capitalism that's made me feel less of myself. Kind of like retouching what my humanity allowed me to then kind of like look outwards in a way where that I wasn't constantly looking inwards and kind of like self-feeding, almost like an Ouroboros, like self-feeding my anxiety, where I could kind of get out of myself and start looking at the society around me. And I started like organizing, unionizing, like I'm on the committee of a housing union and just trying to help the people around me. And I found like that helps me. And like it's there is an element of selfishness to it.
Of
And
course.
it's that I found looking after myself means I can look after other people. And that's when I encountered this just like this philosophy within anthropology, which is just like humans exist in communion. We always have, we always will, and we always should. Or that we're communities of people, and it's never just about identifying like individual. I'm struggling with words. It's not about maximizing your goal. It's about finding out how you can achieve your goals in your community, and then like help that community, and you'll help yourself. And that was one of the things that left-wing politics like really helped me feel at a level that I hadn't felt before, which is how I can feel a part of something by being a part of something. It's a very all over the place way of describing it.
No, it's something that you just. That's my story. It's why do I do this? Why do I do the fluid voice? It's partly to commit. I mean, that's something I can do. I'm disabled, so I can't. My physical range is limited. Um, and um, I had a good career as a musician. That came crashing very suddenly because of the virus, but
Oh, yeah.
it was always that is the community. I'm always good to the people in it. I'm always part of that community. I'm helping. Where can do you need a gig here? Do you need something here? Um, yes, you can borrow my guitar as long as you don't smash it at the end. um, I mean, that seems like simple shit, but it's
Mm.
part of it's if you try and give back as much as it comes upon you to give back, then it's useful to and it's useful for everybody, including myself. And it is selfish, and that's okay. I mean, it's not Ayn Rand selfish, which
I
is
was about to say that.
um, it's. I mean, making things better for everybody does include yourself.
It reminds me of advice that I once got where it's surround yourself with people who'll hold you to account,
Yeah.
because you will then do that for them. And that means that you all become better people because of it. And that's that idea of it, like there's an element of like self-preservation and like self-benefit to it, but it's a collective communal goal. And you'll sometimes see it with a lot of, it's kind of like prepubescent or like early adolescence, where you'll find these communities exist where they'll be to like never critique each other, always have each other's backs, even when they don't deserve it. Where I feel like they stunt kind of like almost to a degree like the emotional and intellectual maturity of the people involved, because what they do is they end up getting like a very thick outer shell where they feel secure, but then the moment something happens, the entire group deserts them, and like that sense of community dissolves, and no individual can survive something like that, and then they experience horrendous traumas, which is why that element of look after yourself by looking after the people around you and making sure that like there are very few things more powerful than an incredibly tightly knit community that thinks of itself as family. That is one of the most immovable objects in the world, and you can derive enormous strength, power, and just courage from existing within that. And like identifying the selfishness in that, I think, is key to motivating the individual to do it. And it's society at whole that benefits from this, because you collectivize that effort. It's if we all look after each other, well then we look after ourselves.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's such a basic thing, and it's one of those. Um, I'm not about to go storming any government buildings, especially since that's a right wing now. Uh, so what can I do? Everything has got to be with. I mean, not everything. Um, I exist within my community. I try and make my own communities because I have the writers community, the
Hmm.
musicians community, the trans community. Um, I knew it was a mistake to put them there. And trying to make that all of those a good place to be. If you ever wander into trans Twitter, it's a bit of a microcosm of the way we are in real life, uh, or macrocosm, um, probably a bit of both. uh, and it's like we bicker incessantly within ourselves until someone from the outside comes and tries to tell us we suck
Hmm.
just for being. If someone tells us that we suck because of X, then fine. Um, we're if we're doing something horrendous, which you know, the
Like if you killed somebody in cold blood, I would have no problem calling you out for it, but it would have nothing got to do with any immutable characteristic you have.
no, yeah, I'm trying to figure out a good way of saying this. So we it's once the people from the from Turfland wandering where all over that and everything else gets put aside. I don't know that I think it strengthens the community. I spent a lot of time protecting people
Hmm.
um, from the outer thing because I'm older and it's easier for me to do. I mean, I'm turning 56 in a couple weeks. So. I
Happy
don't,
birthday.
it, oh, thank you. um, I mean, is that what you're? Is that what you're talking about? I'm just trying to.
It's in a way, especially when like when you're bringing in like the age card, the profile. Like I turned 31 a few weeks ago, and one thing that I've definitely noticed is just the older you get, it's not that you stop caring what people think about you. It's more that you kind of get that they don't really know. Because in the weirdest way I'll put it, it's like I'm 31, I barely know myself, so how the fuck can they accurately critique me? Um, I also just have a basic. I have an idea that it's along the lines of that. We constantly we throw around the word projection in a lot of ways, but we never really know who somebody is. So what we do is we just use them as a mirror to try project into them what we think we would do in that situation. So in reality, you're never really critiquing somebody. You're critiquing who you think you would be in their circumstances. And I think that's a really big thing to remember. That can expose bigots in a heartbeat
Oh
because they can't put themselves in your shoes. And to do so triggers a fear response. So they will then attack you for making them afraid. And it ties into that. And like you said, like Turf Island, like I'm an Irishman. So the oppression of the British is something I can relate to in a heartbeat. And
yeah,
you have nothing but my sincerest apologies, sincerest sympathies. That shit needs to be dealt with. It really does. Transphobia is getting out of fucking hand in the UK right now. Last time I heard, I think they were passing legislation basically meaning that anyone under the age of 16 requires like I think it's like a court order to be allowed to go to a gender confirming clinic.
yeah.
That shit's not okay. Like it just straight up not okay. And the way that I would say it is like if somebody was born intersex, they will be on a table the following morning to get a gender confirmation surgery. Why that double standard is incredible, but it's to meet, like we mentioned earlier with the river analogy, it's to meet that surface layer analysis of making the majority of the population just feel comfortable with who's around them. And communities who are, I won't say at the victim of this, but kind of like communities who are being held submerged within that water, um, you're going to, if you notice that's happening, you're going to defend them because like you said, like you will personally benefit from defending the people around you because then you have a stronger community, and because like you know what that's like, you have a lifetime of experience of that, and it'll weather you to a degree where you know it's just raw bigotry, it's hatred in a very ugly form, and to a degree it's kind of like you'll draw comfort from helping protect the people around you because you know that they shouldn't have to go through something like that.
Yeah, it's all of it. It's when I find um I well what's going on in UK almost happened here. It came it I mean the last administration on their way out
Mm.
changed the school rules for trans people, which like in the last few days, and which is thankfully Biden has changed back already. So it didn't even get implemented. But one of the proposals was that we actually have trans on all our ID, and be that was going to be a thing. And it's so yeah, Turf Island. You're right next to Turf Island.
Yeah.
um, I don't find it so bad from the Irish people I know. I know.
I because like I think a big part of it as well is because like we have that cultural understanding of having a sense of oppression that has nothing got to do with any characteristic, but it's a deliberate othering. So I think we are sympathetic to that perspective. Another aspect is like the right wing is desperately trying to cling to anything in Ireland. We don't have a glorious mythical past for the right to cling to. So it's very difficult for the right wing to actually get something in Ireland. I think it's like a third of our parliament right now is social democratic left wing. No, not left wing in kind of like a communist sense, more left wing in a democratic socialist or social democratic sense. But even that's kind of unheard of in the kind of like Western developed countries at the moment, because they are experiencing a bit of a right wing revival. And that I think ties into, we also have a very healthy feminist scene, and our feminists are militantly anti-transphobe. A friend of mine was the president of a feminist society of a university and actively did a purge of the society, saying, if you're a transphobe, you're not a feminist. I'm not having this discussion. Get the fuck out of my society.
Good. I mean, I try and convert as much as I can, but that's more of a long haul issue.
Right.
The well, the whole ideas of communities. YouTube itself is a weird place for that. You have, I mean, it's set up in three almost distinctive camps there, and very much too in political YouTube. There's left, and if you're not left enough, then then you don't get the attention, or you get called out constantly, which is, okay. Um, I supported Biden because for various reasons, and some of them were selfish, but um, the community on YouTube itself is, but it's very interesting when it comes together. Um, driving, I mean, the most recent thing was driving Calvin Guerra from the village square, really. Which,
I've heard about that, but I know nothing about it.
oh, all it was almost like a the very quick story. He had done something a couple of years ago, and the person he'd done it to came back and said, "This is how this fucked up my life."
Okay.
He had, he'd made fun of her. Of him. Calvin had made fun of the other person, Brennan. I don't know why I'm couching the name. It's Brendan Beckwith. And Brendan came back, and apparently all of non-binary YouTube and a lot of trans YouTube went, binary trans YouTube went at Calvin, because he's been a very harmful sore on our butts for a long time. And but not in a, this is, in an attempt to, fix yourself or leave. It wasn't a just leave thing.
And it's I think an important thing to mention within that context as well is that you'll have people who will try to frame that as something like inherently authoritarian, of like, oh, they're trying to like get something out of me, or you have to be excluded from the public square. That's any community anywhere. If you have a family and somebody comes in with horrendous views who will absolutely just like threaten the existence and well-being of that family, they're given the ultimatum of don't be that or fuck off. This is just like self-policing within communities is as old as communities have been a thing. This is like I read a book years ago that theorized that the existence of language, like language evolved within humans to mediate social interactions and social relationships, where we learned how to talk so that we could have more complicated social relationships. And those complexities will emerge themselves in, here's the social etiquette you have to follow or get out of my community. That's the way it's always been. It's the way it always will be. That's just, we're social animals, like we said earlier, and we have that sense of community within us, where I don't really see anything wrong with what happened there. It's a sense of like, just be better or be somewhere else. And I feel like there's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. It's like, we'll use a desert analogy. If you want to drink all the water, don't, or go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. The tragedy of the commons, really. And it's both the tragedy of the commons and uh, Popper. Why am I completely blanking on the name of the
Karl Popper, tolerance paradox, by chance.
paradox of tolerance? Yes.
Okay.
uh,
Popper has his odd reactionary take, but I do. Karl Popper did a lot of work on pseudoscience, and I love him for it.
oh yeah, but the paradox of tolerance is really it's pretty there. And I grew up with a leftist mother and a Nazi stepfather.
Oh, okay.
And when I say Nazi, I mean actual Nazi, and he kept that through his life. Our last argument was over my boyfriend who was black. He didn't care that I was gay or trans. He knew I was trans at the time, when I was 17, 18, but couldn't stand that I was a black guy. Very strange thing. And so my entire upbringing was a dialectic between, well, not exactly a dialectic because he was also abusive, but uh, mediating between those two ideas. And I always veered left on it. Because his entire way of thinking didn't jibe with what I was observing in the world. And the idea of freedom itself, which freedom is, if we take, yeah, freedom is an odd duck, because freedom is a social construct as much as any other social construct. What are we free to do? What aren't we? It's one of those things I wanted to talk about in great length at another time, but I'm kind of like, this is what's rolling through my head right now, and I'm just sort of going with whatever's going through my head right
now. I have things to say on this if you want to keep going, yeah.
Oh no, please. You're
because it's the concept of freedom. The way I like to think of freedom is that it's the available avenues of informed choice, and the three important parts is like the available, informed, and choice. If I restrict and curate your choices and say you're free to live as any cisgender, then you're not really free.
right.
And I've given you the illusion of freedom and the illusion of choice, which is, I mean, like, spoilers, this is what capitalism does. It says you're free to chase the life you want. You just have to forever give up the majority of the wealth you create. And you need to tie yourself to a job that you have absolutely no security, and they can decide to make you homeless if they ever choose to. But you're free. This is the free world. Like, thank your boss for giving you a job. It's like you need to have the available avenues to pursue something. Like, if something's impossible, then it's not really a choice. Like you're free to go to space. No, you're not. It's not an available avenue for you, and you need to have that choice, and you need to have that the words off the top of my head, but like, you where I always see this come up is in the conversation about violence, because 9 times out of 10, whenever somebody hears the word violence, they immediately think of me punching somebody in the face. When here's actually the thing, and I feel like a lot of people understand this one, and none more than actually liberal feminists. They understand intimately that violence is not just attacking somebody physically, because if that's to be the case, most domestic violence legislation falls the fuck apart. Violence is the coercive removal of freedom. That is the way I think of violence. Any attempt to restrict and remove somebody's available freedoms, that is what a violent action is. And it comes down to, we then come into the philosophical debate of idealism or materialism, and where does this freedom come from? Is it an abstract idea that exists in the minds of humans, where you are free to pursue life, liberty, and love because it is an enshrined right given within the cosmos? Or is it something that only exists if human beings create the conditions for freedom to exist? If a piece of paper stored in the White House somewhere says you're free, but then the society you live in doesn't allow you to be free, then it doesn't matter if the idea exists. The material reality is that you don't have that freedom. So you need to create the conditions to be free. So I sign on the material side of it, where that freedom only exists if we create the conditions for freedom, which is why, like, it even, we can tie it back even to the transphobia debate. Like, the
Yeah.
equality between cis and trans only exists if people fight for that equality and manifest and make real in that society the very real expression of that equality and that freedom. You have to make people free. They're not inherently free. That inherent freedom is used by libertarian capitalism to kind of like enforce this sense of status quo of you're free, stop complaining. When in reality, like, your experience of existing is being that of the contradiction of, well, I'm told I'm free, but I have so many options that just have like a big road barrier to them. And
Yeah.
this is where I say the community you exist within, if you look after your community, they will look after you, and they will create spaces for you to have the full range of freedoms afforded to a human being. And then we will maintain those spaces so that you materially can exist. And is that sense of freedom is the ability to have avenues of informed choice.
I yeah. I took a course in natural rights several years ago, and my pretty much my reaction at the end was, okay, good. Natural rights are bullshit. Um, Thank you for confirming that. You know,
It's a beautiful idea, but it doesn't mean anything if nobody actually like makes them real.
yeah, it's and one of the abstractions of what is so-called natural rights is also I have the logic tree doesn't work, where I have the right to self-defense, therefore I have the right to a gun. Those are not, one does not follow from the other. It's not a sound argument because your premises are hidden. Um, like guns are useful for self-defense, they're generally not. Um, Community is important for self-defense. The whole "it takes a village to raise a child" backlash that Hillary Clinton got years ago was just for saying that kind of thing was astonishing to me, because of course it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to do
Yeah.
anything.
I think what it does is it beautifully touches on, I'm slightly changing the topic here, but it's in line with what you're talking about, and that it's a beautiful description of, like, when people talk about rape culture, exactly what they're talking about. It's not preventing, or sorry, it's not responding or reacting to the event. It's preemptively trying to create the conditions for that never to have happened. Where, like, the first line of defense against something like that shouldn't be to like respond to the event. It should be to make sure that the conditions for it to happen aren't a thing. Like having sex education, having consent classes, just having basic human decency kind of just put into people, and not to objectify each other. All of these things will just like reduce the likelihood of we objectifying each other. And it's the idea of like um making real our intentions, as opposed to just relying on the abstract idea of, well, it shouldn't have happened to you. And it's like, we get that, so let's as a community make sure it doesn't happen to you.
And even yeah, and even that it's a rape. Well, I don't want to get too much into rape culture. That's a trigger warning for me. So just
Apologies.
no, that's fine. I'm again, I'm older. I can deal with a lot of it. But the whole what is up to the individual and what isn't is one of the things that has been more coursing through my brain since last night, of all things. Uh, I mean, somebody tweeted, and because everything sets me off in some kind of giant tangent. Somebody tweeted last night went just a simple line from Out magazine, which if someone tells you their pronouns, that's not a request. Which, yes, and the amount of people saying you can't enforce my speech by law, which is none of what that's saying. You can enforce that by society. It has to be sociologically enforced, or it's ridiculous. And
Yeah,
I, this came out of thinking about, the Proud Boys leader was shown to be an informant, and everybody used the word snitch, and I'm like, ooh, we're really missing the point of him taking down the Proud Boys. You know,
it like I heard about the Proud Boy leader. It didn't immediately resonate with me. So like I haven't formed an idea or a thought about it yet. I'm sitting on. I'm going to watch a lot of what's what I'm looking for. Just a lot of commentary on it so that I can form an opinion on it. It's like, just to offer something. One thing I hate is the a weird culture we've developed in left wing spaces of just like, hey, this thing just happened. Please give me a 4-hour discussion dissecting it. I'm like, it just happened. I don't know yet. But when you were discussing kind of like the reactionary reaction, there's a fun way language works. The reactionary reaction to something like pronouns in just general society is that they'll use the whole argument of like that. Well, we're not going to legally, like, we don't want to legally mandate this, and I'm kind of like, you already do. Like if I have official documentation, I have to include a gendered pronoun attached with like Mr. And that's my formal documentation. So you already legislate it by law. So if you're going to do that, how about you just give people the option to be able to choose what aligns with their sense of internal identity? If you're going to insist on society doing this, how about we give people and individuals the right to actually curate their sense of identity? Or we can just get rid of it altogether and nobody addresses anybody anything. And they don't want that. They want to be able to hold you to what they see you as rather than having to interact. Like there's a German philosopher called Immanuel Kant, where the
yeah,
the crux of his argument is people should never be means and should always be ends, which you can basically boil that down to the idea that whenever you're speaking to a person, understand that you're speaking to another subject. You're speaking to another person. So what you see them as is never what they are. And you have to be okay with seeing them as they want to be seen. And I think that's like, for me, that's the philosophical grounding in the transgender argument for me, which is like, how you see yourself is how I should see you, because I'm one person talking to another person. And it really has nothing to do with how I quote unquote see you, because like I said earlier, I think individuals are incapable of seeing another person. All we can do is use them as mirrors for how we would be in their situation. And well, I'm a cis man. I have no idea what it would be like to be in the shoes of a trans person. So I have to ask them and then relate back to them and intermediate with them so that I can talk to another person and not just a mirror of my own insecurities. And this is what the right wing
right.
completely misses, where they want you to make them feel better about themselves because they don't know how to mirror themselves in you. And when they say like you can't compel my speech, and it's like, but we already do. These are your laws we're trying to change. These are your laws we're trying to amend. Remember, like, what we want is fundamental deconstruction of the entire system and introduce a stateless society. Like we've nowhere near what we want. We just want to be comfortable in your society.
Yeah, that's almost entirely how I put it. And I'd like the idea of curating identity, which is, I mean, obviously something we do online anyway. We have to.
Hmm.
I don't talk very much in real life, and yet I can sit here and talk back and forth for a long time, um, because I enjoy it, because that is part of who I am online. And something like Twitter or Facebook is much easier for me. Um, but this is an autistic thing, and I like people in the abstract, but and I will try and help as many as I can, or have as many people around me as I can. It's lovely, um, but it's always there's I I have a speculation, and I hope I do not get dragged on anything for making the speculation, because I am putting it out there. This is all it is, and this is how I relate to the world. So one of one of the reasons I think that there's such a high incidence of autism in trans people, or that trans people seem more likely to come from, or autistic people seem more likely to transition. Both of those things are true. Um, I don't think it's a. I was going to use comorbidity, but I definitely don't want to use that word. I,
Hmm.
I don't think it's correlative, but I do think that the entire way to exist as an autistic person in the world, which is having to deconstruct everything that comes at you. Tear it down. What am I looking at? Relate it to something in your own head. I'm making the speculation entirely on experience. So somebody who feels like we do will say, okay, I've deconstructed the idea of who I am to the point where I don't think who I am is who I should be, physically or mentally, or physically or identity wise. It's easier for us. uh, people people who are on autistic spectrum, the although sometimes conversing with us can get incredibly annoying. I'm well aware of that, because I had someone with severe ADHD on, and before a while ago actually, and we decided before the show that we were just going to have a conversation. We were going to use the language that we shared, because I thought it would be interesting for people who are not autistic or ADHD to hear what we sound like when we talk to each other.
Okay, I really want to listen to that now. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it's a Leokai. If you go back and watch that, it's my best friend found it unlistenable.
Well, I just to very quickly interject, like I am absolutely fascinated by semantics, and nine times out of ten when you hear the word semantics, it's somebody saying, "Oh, this is just semantics. Why do we care?" Semantics is like it's the philosophical study of meaning and how you convey meaning in language. So, like you and your friend, I would imagine it like everything you've said is like it like filled to the brim with meaning, and it would be meaning that each other can interpret but other people may not be able to interpret. That fascinates me because language is it's inherently constructed. So the fact that some people can understand and some people can't, like, to me that's a well. I want to drink from that well. I really want to study that. That's fascinating to me. Philosophy is my love, as you can tell.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
I thought you mentioned before that you're not sure if you're ADHD or perhaps autistic spectrum, which is not for me to diagnose or decide for you, obviously, but um, I have, yeah, I have to. It's like speaking to people in general is like speaking a second language, and sometimes it's nice when I can just talk to people who understand me inherently, even if no one outside of it does.
Mm.
You know, uh, and every community has its own language that's unique to them. I mean, Buffalo has a sports culture and a Polish culture,
Yeah.
and that's cool. I can speak that, but it's another language to me.
It,
Um,
it- it's funny you mentioned that actually, because like I just came from a seminar discussing Frank Jameson using postmodernism to deconstruct contemporary culture for how it's self-referential, where if you don't get it, you'll never understand it. And it's fascinating.
well, meme culture is like that too, isn't
Oh,
it?
oh yeah. I don't understand memes. Like I'm lucky. My sister is just like a shit poster. She gets memes, so I'll just like hit her up and say like, "Hey, what does this mean?"
I'm also lucky I have an 18 year, well, soon to be 19. We have the same birthday, so in the
Oh,
house.
that's fun.
Yeah.
You can
Um,
alternate years of who'll do breakfast in bed.
yeah, kind of like that. Uh, I'm the older. I had to do it for my mom, who also has the same, well, as the day before. But the not important. Sorry, that's me going off into my own space. Um,
No worry. I'm famous on my stream for just tangenting, where like I'll begin the stream with one conversation, and after an hour I'll realize I had detoured, and I'll have to ask chat what was I talking about.
yeah, but those are fun.
I
Uh,
love them. They're so much fun.
um, it's nice to have a translate. I have a translator, and uh, in having someone, it's my anime and meme culture translator for a lot of things, and then I translate some of what's going because he's not involved in trans YouTube or Twitter or activism. He's just sort of doing his own thing.
Hmm.
um, and that's fine. So I can translate that for him. And it's one of the funny things because as much as he's closer with his mom, who lives in the next room, um, when we talk in front of his mom, nothing we say is understood. uh,
Is that there's so much kind of like mythology built up between the two of you, where that ye almost speak in words that only the other gets, where it's like everything is referencing like a previous event.
yeah, it's Demakat, I don't remember the exact line from Star Trek. Yeah,
I have that with my own sister, where it's like my partner has said it to me like that if me and my sister get together, the entire world won't have a clue what we're talking about. We will just conversations for hours, and like they're all like referencing old in jokes. It's so I do kind of get where you're coming from. Would you mind if I just ran to the bathroom?
oh, I hit. Okay, short break. And yeah, we wandered into a different place on language and like and I was saying before we got back on that I keep bringing it back to community because it's a subject that you have a lot of interesting ideas on. I'm just absorbing ideas right now because I don't. I like the idea that see, I froze myself by using the same word twice. Uh, I'd like that you don't immediately decide something, which is one of I'm told it's one of my faults. It takes me a long time to comment or decide on something, unless it's something have some familiarity with, which
No worries, no worries. Take your time.
which is it's a good thing. And community is very much in on my radar right now, so that's also a good thing. You know?
Because one of the things about community for me is that it's um in a weird way is that like what one thing that just like about me as a person is I've always been attracted to things that I find peculiar, odd, or unique. um and it took me a while to realize that a lot of those different things are ways of processing like characteristics and qualities that you don't find reflected in yourself, where like if you come across somebody who appears odd to you, it's because they're displaying characteristics that you don't see in yourself, so you don't recognize that thing in them. That is alluring to me. That's like a glimmer. They shine. I'm fascinated by that. And I want to talk to people. Like I love doing that so that I can like it's to get Jungian about it. It's I'm high in a trait called extroverted intuition, which is where I am in my element, being exposed to things I don't understand, because then I get to process it and I get to think about it. And for me, community was one of those things, because like I'm incredibly insular. I'm very introverted. I They say no man is an island. I will try to break that. I have a tendency to not talk to my parents, not because I'm fighting with them, but because I'll just forget that they exist. It's I'm so comfortable in my own sense of self that I kind of forget that there's a world around me. And that can be an incredibly toxic thing. And throughout my 20s, I discovered just how unhealthy that can be. And to a degree, a lot of it was that I find it very difficult to feel comfortable in large crowds. And I started noticing that part of that was because I just like being on my own. So I then started noticing that the general belief I have is that humans are better off in communities. So it's then for me, it's try to foster a presence in the community that allows me to kind of be like peripheral to it, but still attached to it. And that's why I'm very interested in communities, because it's how can we create different kinds of communities so that different kinds of people can still commune together. We can have lots of different, like it's there should be no like when I say the word community, there shouldn't be a thing that pops into your head. There should be like an abstract concept of
Yeah.
people being together in many different ways. And it it became important to me when I realized that like I don't like being around other people, but I need to be around other people. And if I
Yeah.
need to, I'm sure other people do. So it's about if I can do it for myself, I can do it for other people, because if I'm doing it for them, I'm doing it for myself.
Yeah. And yeah, see, we've come to full circle to okay, that was the what you do section. Or what do you do? See, um,
I'd
what
make a great politician.
this is going to be the weird, possibly the strangest example, but I'm OP. I'm original punk, so from back in the day,
Hmm.
um, and one of the role I took on in the punk spaces was to be some there's always a ring of people around the people who are in the middle, doing their dance and slamming up against each other. I always took the ring role where I was peripheral to it but still involved in it. So when somebody started flying out, you know move that person. My friend, I took her to her first punk rock show a year ago, and her, excluding the lost year. Let's just call it a year ago, but it's 2 years ago. And
Vacuum year.
yes, at one point during the show, I could observe what was going on, and I actually physically picked her up and moved her because it's like someone's about to fly this way. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And the, irrelevant that part of it is, but it's one of those things. Yeah, this is the community that exists. I'm standing there. I'm part of it, but I'm not. I'm also on the periphery of it, which is cool.
Because it's I on the topic of music, because like you had mentioned earlier that you're a musician.
Yeah,
um Years I've since given up, but I used to be a musician myself. And even in that vein, in a lot of the bands that I was in, what I was a prolific, I'm saying that word wrong, prolific songwriter,
yeah.
where I would come into band practice with, okay, I'm going to play half an hour's worth of songs I've written. You decide what you like, and then I'll teach them to you and we'll practice. And a large part of that was because I hated writing songs with other people because they never got what I wanted to do. And it's like I'll have an idea, and like I'll come to them with like, here are the two guitar lines, here's the bass line, I have these ideas for a vocal melody, here's the drums that I kind of have in my mind, and then I'll give them artistic creative license to make it their own. But I hated figuring out a common sound with other people. Where there was my, like, in a weird way, like there's a community that I'm on the periphery of, but then the other side of it was just like, I was good enough that everyone wanted me in their bands.
It's
Like I was a good enough songwriter that I wrote good songs.
it's one of the funny things. I've looked back, and out of 200 and some performed songs, I'm not counting stuff that I just wrote and sat my pitcher on, because there's actually one right there.
Mm.
My water pitcher on. Um, the 6 were written with other people. I'm very lucky in having a collaborator now that understands what I'm trying to do and hones it more, which is very nice.
Actually, in you saying that, it reminded me that there was one guitarist who I could sit down and write songs with. And I think it was because he knew exactly what I wanted to do, and he would write things that would beautifully complement what I was doing. And then it would make me change to suit what he was doing, because I loved what he was doing so much that I wanted to then play off of him. And it was like, to borrow off when you're saying like you were having a conversation with your friend, it was almost like we both shared a musical language in a weird way, where it's kind of like I got what he was saying, and I was just saying something back to him. And I could not explain it to anybody if I even tried. He was
Yeah.
the only person I could write a song with.
And well, yeah, Margot feels the same way about me. I know that. She doesn't write with other people, and we've collaborated. We've not so much collaborated. We've arranged each other's material,
Mm.
um, and that's been a. We also had a very good bass player for a while, and he was the one who focused us together, which was very nice. Because we're both okay. We want to bounce off. We want to do okay. We want to do 50 covers. Let's own these 50 covers. And plus we each come in with 10 originals. And I want to do 1940 swing and OP punk. I don't know, a little Johnny Cash on the side, I suppose. So it's always but it's positioning community, because I've been doing it for so long. I'm sort of a grand dame of a lot of places I'm in, and people defer to me now, which I don't like. Um, I don't. It's funny because I don't like it. It's like, no, I want to help you. I don't want you to just go, what, and I want your input on what's what. It's just an oddity. It's half my band is over 50 and half of it's under 30. So
Nice eclectic mix there.
yeah, and it's useful. Um, that's a conversation we probably should just head off on. But yeah, the whole idea of community, and that is one place where I want to be in the community still, and I can't be um, because I've been around too long, um, and people defer, and I'm no, I want to be everybody else, but I'm not.
in
It's,
in a weird way, like part of your role in there could be to say there won't always be somebody to defer to, and that you kind of have to commune with people to come to decisions amongst yourselves and not look to somebody for answers, because you would have been around long enough to know that there isn't somebody who just has that wisdom just locked in their back pocket somewhere, that you're always kind of going to have to come to a conclusion on yourself. And sometimes how you do that is by bouncing an idea off somebody, but ultimately you still come to that conclusion.
exactly. Um, I'm not dictating anything. I'm just here to help.
Like
I haven't.
I always view my role in any organization I'm in as being an advisor. I got so lucky in the housing union I'm in. I'm the admin chairperson, so I spend all of my time going to the other departments and saying, "Hey, what do you need? Let me help you."
Yeah, that's. Don't put me in charge of anything. I'm very mad. I'm bad at it. Uh, I'm very bad at it. So anyway, we should wrap up. I know you have to go, and we're coming close to an hour 10, which is my optimal length here.
Mm.
Um,
Do you have any closing questions you want to catch me on? Just so like anything I can wrap you up with.
Marx and Engels. I like Engels better, weirdly enough. I think his writing is much more coherent.
Yeah, I like early Marx just because I like he's trying to figure out if he's a philosopher or an economist. I like that about him. Engels is far more coherent a writer. He has a point. He knows what he's trying to say, and he says it. The only thing of his that I've started reading is I'm so underread in my fucking Engels, because it's one thing that I just want to say to people. Like, if you say I've read Marx, chances are you've read Marx and Engels. They co-wrote a lot of shit together. If you've read the German ideology, you've read Engels, you've read a chapter of Marx. Engels wrote that. And it's that's sorry, that's I went off on a tangent there. I haven't read nearly enough Engels, but Socialism, Scientific or Utopian, I'm in the middle of working my way through that, and I've enjoyed it. I want to read his work on I think it's like State, the Family, and something. Do you know the text off the top of your head? It's
Yes, but oh, I only have Descartes to Nietzsche over
uh,
here.
oh, no worries.
Upstairs. Sorry, that's what's upstairs.
As far as I know, like one of the arguments he makes in is like the quote unquote family is a constructed unit of society. There's nothing natural about it. It's something we've done, so it'll be whatever we want it to be.
Well, yeah, the concept in queer community, concept of found family is huge, as you'd imagine. Um, which is why I'm still living here with my ex-wife and her fiance, who I've known longer than I've known her. Yeah. The Anyway, where can people find you?
Uh,
You
um,
said you had Twitch. What's the channel on that?
If you just Google Zanzi, everything that comes up is mine, except for a cosplay. For whatever reason, there's somebody who cosplays called Zanzi. That's not me. But if anyone ever wants to dox me, that's going to make it very confusing for them. You can catch me on Twitter. You can catch me on YouTube. You can catch me on Twitch. It's all Zanzi, except for Twitter. It's Zan_Z. Again, somebody got Zanzi and they just disappeared. I mainly do just like political unpacking and rants. I need to read an essay that was published in the Irish Socialist Republican Party. I can't remember what the topic is. I printed it off, but like that's in the plans. I'm currently working on a YouTube video using Final Fantasy VII to deconstruct the concept of ideology. I've been working on it for 8 months. It's probably not worth 8 months, but that's how long it takes me to fucking do the damn thing. But I'm using Marx, Althusser, and Gramsci to deconstruct the concept of ideology in how what most people think of as ideology is actually a very liberal interpretation and not a radical materialist interpretation of ideology. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. But yeah, you can find me on all good social media platforms like that. If it's worth having, I'll be on it. I do the odd bit of Medium, but I don't write nearly anywhere near enough that I need to. I need to write more. But yeah, just put in Zanzi into Google and you'll find me.
Okay. It's been absolutely wonderful having you here. I mean, it's as good as I was expecting, which and I expected a lot, which is why I went through computer hell to get here.
Thanks a million for having me on. It's as is always the case. In an hour, we got to maybe 2 of the 20 topics that we would have loved to have discussed.
Yeah, pretty much. We got to the second question, which is better than sometimes. Addressing the audience, then. They use it on the fluid voice now, so it's odd for me to just say it by myself. But my closing statement is and will always be, your life matters, your voice matters, and you matter. Uh, I will add community matters as well onto this one because that's what we're all trying to build towards, better, and that's what matters. Thank, thank you and good night. You can find me here and Normality Quake on Twitter and other places, but if you go there, you'll see I haven't done anything in a very long time. um, once again, thanks to Zanzi, and have a good night. That's pretty much what I had to say.